Good day to you. Today I want to talk to you about two sons and two cities and relate it to the predicament of our nation. How do nations run down? How do nations run up? We know in 1948, when we received independence from the British, our rupee, Sri Lankan rupee, was equivalent to $1. And in 1950, Sri Lanka was able to give a debt of sovereign British pounds to Britain. And in 1948, or 1950 for that matter, Sri Lanka Ceylon then, was the most prosperous nation in Asia, more prosperous than any nation in Africa or South America. Besides, we were more prosperous than many nations in Europe because Europe was after the Second World War. So the first son we are going to look at his name is Yasef in his language. It means one who adds. So there's a son who adds to the family line, to the nation, increases. That is the son or daughter we want to have in our nation. So it is said of Joseph, he is a fruitful branch by a spring. So one that he will always bear fruit in every season. That is, the season of a child may go every 3 years or every 5 years. First 5 years, 5 to 10 or 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20, like that. Or for that matter, when you are 30, 40, 70 or 80, there are still fruits waiting to come along and a new branch you can grow. Nelson Mandela became president of South Africa after such a long, rigorous jail time, isn't it? Much advanced in life. So, the Good Shepherd has a branch to sprout in your life which will become fruitful, and he sustains it with a fountain that feeds you, a spring. From inheritance, from relationships. The spring comes from your training and from the God blessing. So there's a spring undergirding your life, out of which feeds the branch and the fruit. And then there's a promise that this fruit will last. And there's a promise that even in drought time, you are not going to wither off. Your fruit will not fail. That's a promise. Then it is also said, your branches will run over a wall. So this son, Yasef, not only adds, when he meets an obstruction like a wall, he overcomes the obstruction. In fact, he uses the wall to step up, go higher. This is the quality we are calling for Sri Lanka at this time. And we want the 35-year-olds to do the utmost you can for the 18 to 25-year-olds, the Aragale generation, the protest generation, who feel they have no hope. Because the 30 to 35-year-olds, as much as we did, had the best of Sri Lanka serving us. We did have problems, but our schools went on okay, great schools produced great education, and our workplaces we could work well, we could train well, and our doctors were sought all over the world. And our NVQ skilled personnel could be employed anywhere in the world. That's the Sri Lanka that grew. And then there's the Sri Lanka that has run down. So we are looking for a son who makes a wall, the obstruction, the challenge and opportunity to grow greater. And his name is Yasef, or God adds. That's what it means. That's how we are going to overcome the situation. And we are trying to connect the 30 to 35-year-olds who had a good season of life to support the generation who feels they had no hope. Then it is also said, archers bitterly attacked him and shot at him and harassed him. So harassment came, but he did not wither. His bow remained firm and his arms were agile. So the explanation here, the parable, is that, or the description is that, your bow is your life stretch and the life measure. And from that life measure, we want to shoot the best arrow in that season. Let's say you're 20 years old and maybe you have started university education and you want to get the best stretch and going to the target, going to the maximum height, going the maximum distance, or you may be in a business startup, you want to have that maximum stretch, maximum distance, right aim. And if you would allow God's cheek to the Good Shepherd to work with you, so here is your bow, this is your life stretch, it's yours, but you ask God to cooperate, then He puts His cheek, and the two together, you put the bow, take the aim, and take the stretch for every season, and you always get the best out of life. That's the example of the bow and arrow that I want to place before you. So this was the blessing that was provided. Now that is for Joseph, who builds up the nation, who builds up the family. Now we are going to look at a son called Cain, whose nature, character and behavior pattern was quite different, and this is how he perceives his own life. This is what he says: "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground." So one problem is shed blood, the innocent blood that has been shed in war, in abortion, in rape, in different ways. Blood is shed, and that blood calls out. So Cain had blood on his hands because he killed his brother. Now you are diminished. Word used here is cursed. And there is a cry from the ground. Your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. So when blood cries for vengeance, justice decides. What happens has happened in Sri Lanka. No reconciliation, no restoration, vindictiveness, and people now turn against each other for the slightest thing on fuel queues and so on. Each man's hand against the other. What a tragedy it has become. Yes, governments do wrong, and it has a spiraling down effect of the population, on the professions, on the corporate, and so on. So here is this son. When you cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield its strength. You remember Joseph's blessing was that full stretch, full blessing, every branch growing to full potential and growing over every wall. Here, Cain's life, it meets unforeseen obstructions. You cultivate the ground, it will no longer yield its strength to you. You will be a vagrant and a wanderer on the earth. No aim, wandering. Cain said, "My punishment is too great to bear. I am driven away from the face of the ground." So there's constant rambling and movement, roaming around without destiny, without purpose, ups and downs, and I'm hidden. So his destiny, his future, he can't see. I'm hidden, and I will be a vagrant and a vagabond on the earth. And whoever finds me, his hand will be against me. So people against people. So this is the sad thing about this son called Cain, and the blessed thing about that son whose name was Joseph. Now you have to relate this to a nation's rundown or a nation's build-up. So I like to read this passage this way to understand there are spiritual phenomena working in politics, and in what we see comes from what we don't see. So here it is described. It is the Good Shepherd who gives support and supply for bread and governance. The mighty man and the warrior, the judge and the prophet, the diviner and the elder, the captain of the 50 and the honorable man, the counselor and the expert artisan, all of them together, I will make mere lads their princes, and capricious children will rule over them, and the people will be oppressed, each one by another. So this is not only about governments that fail, each one oppressed by another. And I need to add to this, monkeypox is coming. The monkeypox vaccine is coming, and the CDC has ordered $3 billion worth of monkeypox vaccine for a disease that have been found. Only about 12 numbers of the disease has been found, but already they are getting ready for another go around. So people will be oppressed one by another, and each one by his neighbor. So it's not only governments that fail, but people oppressing each other, and a global regime waiting to implement the global diktat they have designed. The youth will storm against the elder, one section against the other, but the inferior against the honorable. When a man says to his brother, "You have a cloak, you will be our ruler, and these ruins will be under your charge." What a description of what has happened to nations. These ruins are under your charge. One is saying to the other ruler. He will protest on that day, saying, "I will not be your healer, I will not be your ruler, for in my house there is neither bread nor cloak. You should not appoint me ruler of the people." Now, normally people fight to be the ruler, people fight to be the president, but a time is coming, people are saying, I can't take it. How true it is in Sri Lanka, isn't it? For the city has stumbled and has fallen, and their actions are against one another. So this is a time that has befallen our nation. What is the way out? I described one son, Joseph, whose character and whose building up can be that of a nation, and another son called Cain, whose rundown could be the character of a nation. We have contrasted two nations, and we are now looking, and then we gave a description of how the rundown continues in different ways. I want to read another passage about how different economic lines get affected. Here it is. They will fight against each other, brother against his neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. The spirit of the countrymen will be demoralized. They will be confounded in their strategy. Then what happens? A cruel master will rule over them. A mighty king will rule over them. The waters from the sea will dry up, and the river will be parched and dry. Canals will emit a stench. The streams of Egypt will thin out and dry up. The reeds and rushes will rot away. Bulrushes by the Nile, by the edge of the Nile. This is about one country, but how economic resources, ecological resources run down. And the fishing industry runs down. And manufacturers of linen made from combed flax and the weavers of white cloth will be utterly dejected. So this is how nations' economies are made to run down by a global cartel. Moreover, the manufacturers of linen and the pillars of Egypt will be crumbled. Hired laborers will be grieved in soul. So this is economic failure coming to one country after another. So what is the way out? Here is described a city. This is how this city is described. We have a strong city. God sets up walls and ramparts for security. Open the gates that the righteous nation may enter. The one that remains faithful. The steadfast of mind you will keep in perfect peace, because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever. For in God the Lord we have an everlasting rock. He brings low those who dwell on high, the proud ones, but those who trust in the good shepherd will make the path of the righteous level. Way of the righteous is smooth, O upright one, make the path of the righteous level. We have waited for your judgments eagerly. Your name, even your memory, is the desire of our soul. So this is the way out for every nation. The good shepherd waits to do his best for you. As I explained to you, Joseph the son, his bow, that is the stretch of your life, potential of your life. You give it over to God. He puts his cheek with you and you draw every season of your life. Shoot the arrow for that season to maximum duration, maximum height, maximum effect. This is what the Good Shepherd has for you. You can say, come into my heart in this troublous time for all the nations of the world and in this difficult time for our nation, Sri Lanka. O Good Shepherd, lead me in paths of righteousness. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare your table for me before adversities, and you anoint my head with oil, and my cup will run over because of my trust in you. I hope this will be your experience. I am Dr. Lalith Mendis, and if you want any more clips, my last clip was about Shylock. Are you a Shylock demanding the pound of flesh? Please send me a WhatsApp to 074-211-5011, 074-211-5011. Also, you can download my app, Golden Nuggets, from App Store or Google. Thank you for listening. We'll join again another time. You know, I have many clips on brain and screen for children to get out of online addiction. So you can drop a WhatsApp to 074-211-5011. Thank you for listening.